Welcome to SikhCast, brought to you by Sikh Research Institute, illuminating every path.
Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. My name is Jasleen Kaur, and I'm a researcher at SikhRI. This is another episode of the Sidak Impact series, where we interview Sidak alumni about their experiences at Sidak this past year in 2024. I'm joined here today by Phera Singh. Fateh Phera, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh, everybody. My name is Phera Singh. I live in New York and I'm an artist. Happy to be here today.
Yeah, I wanted to just before we kind of get into the full conversation, I wanted to ask about what made you decide to attend Civic? Like what was the thought process? Um, I know for me, the first time it was like very much like it felt like the right time and also like I had the added benefit of sibling pressure. Where it was like everybody's going. You better get on the train. So I'm just wondering like what led you to make that decision? And was it one that you kind of went back and forth on? What did that look like before you actually like filled out the application?
Yeah, I was really excited to find out about Sidak when I found out about it, which was last winter, so maybe like last January of 2024 or something. Before that, I'd never heard about it. And when I found it, I was like, oh, this is great. Like I've been looking for something like this because my kind of learning journey with SikhRI started later in my life. And for people who come to SikhRI later in life, I feel it can be a little hard to find resources and community. Um, so I think I knew pretty immediately that I wanted to go to Sidak and um yeah, does that answer the question?
Yeah, yeah, that does. I think maybe you can give us a little bit more of a sense of how you like felt, like first impressions. So when you finally like arrived at the like chaos that is YVR and like got on the bus with everyone, eventually to be like sort of dropped in the middle of the mountains. Um, how are you feeling? Like what emotions are happening at this time in the like beginning of the 2 weeks?
Yeah. I was nervous a bit, but I had actually listened to a few of the like previous Siddiqers interviews
Oh no.
before I went to Siddiq. So exactly what I'm offering people now. And that helped me feel more comfortable. Yeah, I think when I arrived at the airport and I was meeting everybody, like that moment had a lot of anticipation because it was kind of walking up to a group of people that I was thinking, okay, these are the people I'm going to be with for the next 2 weeks. Um, and then that moment of anticipation passed pretty quickly. Like once I said hi to everybody and I was like, okay, I'm here and like I feel comfortable and yeah, I think like pretty quickly I felt like okay, this is going to be great. Yeah, just like, once like breaching that threshold of like I arrived, I'm with everybody, I was like, okay, this is great. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah. No, that's real. I also like I've thought a lot about how um there's like not a lot of moments in our adult lives where we're like gonna be in a situation like that. It felt like I remember the first time that I went to Civic, which was when I was like 18. It was like fine, it was a little more familiar because I think that there's something kind of like you feel more well practiced at like becoming friends with people or like making small talk with people when you're like maybe in a college setting. And so coming again, I went back in 2017 when it was like I was a little bit out of college and I didn't have like I hadn't sort of used that muscle. And I'm actually an introvert, which people might be surprised about given how much I yap. But I was just like, do I even know how to do it? Like, do I know how to make friends? And it was really nerve-wracking for me
Mm.
to like be in the situation of like, okay, I'm on the bus. I have to like, I'm gonna like talk to these people. What do I even ask them? Like, I don't know. And I got really in my head about it. And then it like exactly what you said, as soon as like I just did it once, I was like, okay. Um, Everybody also kind of is feeling that way, which I think helps. Um, and it doesn't feel like anybody is closed off to connecting pretty much like right off the bat. And if they are, I think it just like takes a little bit of time. So, yeah, that's something I don't think I've talked about on any of the pods before is like it wasn't just that I was nervous about not knowing enough or like not fitting in. It was also just like the logistics of meeting new people that I thought was yeah, had its own sort of hue of anxiety for me. But I'm glad to hear that it worked out for both of us. So, okay. So then tell me a little bit about the track that you ended up choosing and why you ended up going with that, how it maybe aligned with your interests or like what you hoped to happen for you on your kind of like personal SikhRI journey. Yeah.
Yeah,
Curious.
yeah. Um, yes, I knew right away that I wanted to take Gurbani 101 because in my journey with SikhRI and trying to understand Gurbani, I felt like the English translations were like a stepping stone, but they were never able to offer me, and presently aren't able to offer me like the deeper understanding and connection with Gurbani that I'm seeking. And also having not grown up speaking Punjabi or Hindi, that makes understanding Gurbani intuitively even further away from being attainable. And so the Gurbani 101 course was exactly what I was seeking, like a course to help me understand and relate to Gurbani more directly through understanding sentence structure, common vocabulary, down to the details. Like if someone can understand or can read Gurmukhi, how the different I'm forgetting the term, but like the different symbols that are used in Gurmukhi change the meaning in Gurbani.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's why I chose Gurbani 101.
Yeah. That's the only track that I haven't taken. So there's like a part of me that really wishes that maybe one day I will, but I really relate to the thing that you said about, yeah, feeling like the English translations are a stepping stone and sometimes like sometimes a barrier, maybe, depending
Mm.
on the vocab that's used of like, yeah, I just have so many like vivid memories of being like really young and seeing translations on the like the classic like Gurdwara TV screen
Yeah.
and being like, I don't know about that. Like, I
Yeah,
don't,
yeah, yeah. Things can feel um a little jarring sometimes in those really common translations.
yeah. So I think that probably resonates with a lot of people who, um, especially like didn't grow up with as much, or if any, sort of language knowledge. Because I also, similar to you, didn't have that growing up. So, um, yeah, I think that's a beautiful reason to do it, and I think it encourages like a slow and more can I say this? Like a slower and like more tender approach to Gurbani, where it's not about like extracting meaning as quickly as possible, but it's about kind of like a working on it in a way, and letting it feels more conversational, if I can say that. The like little that I've seen of that track, because I have sat in a couple of times. Um, I think, yeah, there's a part of me that would really like to do that one day. Um, okay. If we like sort of zoom out of the track, um, can you maybe take us through a typical day at Sidak? Like, what is the schedule looking like? Crucially, what time did you have to wake up? And and how did it feel to be a part of that kind of like structure um, over the 2 weeks? Yeah. Did you feel like that was also an important part of the experience, or was that like a more, it's okay if it was important and also difficult, because I would probably categorize it that way. But yeah, just wanting to get a sense of that from you.
Yeah. Um, I would say overall the structure and schedule is helpful and supportive. I mean, being somewhere for 2 weeks in this immersive experience and um, doing Divan twice a day consistently is amazing. Um, and it can also feel rigorous.
Mm.
And I think you have to, um, for me, like I had to take care of myself and could have taken care of myself better as well by getting better sleep. Because waking up at 6 a.m. being in, not waking up at 6 a.m., being in Divan every day at 6 a.m. Um, especially when you're in the social experience where you're talking to people in the langar hall late and trying to like absorb and have fun like while you're there, enjoy connecting with people. Um, yeah, like if you're if you're it's hard to balance it all and you can end up feeling pretty like depleted if you're not taking care of yourself. And yes, and you will be waking up, of course, even earlier if you're going to meet with Sangat for Amrit Vela.
Yeah.
So yeah, um, that's what I have to say. Like the structure is really awesome and helpful, and the consistency is great, and it's also a lot. And I would suggest like taking care of yourself the best you can so that you can really be immersed in the experience and get the most out of it.
Yeah, I think that's great advice, and it's advice I also will take. Yeah, I think the thing that we say at the beginning of every Sidak is like it is a marathon, not a sprint, which is like the classic, like, I don't know, thing that people say when they're like, don't burn yourself out too quick. But I think that that's really true and something, and it's kind of, I mean, it's a nice problem to have in some ways too, right? Because it's like by the time you really get into it, you like want to spend time with people and get to know them and um, think through things with them or just like talk about what's on your mind from class with them, which is also part of the structure of the day is that you're also spending time with people who aren't in your track, right? So the fourth session of the day, the leadership sessions, um, or even during like meal times or during like free time or when there's like activities and stuff, there's also a lot of kind of conversations happening between tracks that I think is really like generative and interesting and exciting. But yeah, sometimes it eats into the sleeping time or like the working time because I know Gurbani 101 has a lot of like homework. Um, so I think that that is helpful advice. Um, Kind of along that line then, because I've talked a little bit about, and you have too, like the relationships that you build at Civic over those 2 weeks. Um, so I'd be interested in your take on kind of on that. Like how did the environment and the people around you contribute to your experience? And did you feel like you left Civic having like built connections that like lasted beyond Civic? And what does that look like now for you?
Yeah. Yeah, people at Sidak are lovely. I made multiple friends and feel grateful for the relationships that I built with the facilitators as well. There's a facilitator who I have like asked questions to, asked, you know, have continued learning from since Sidak. And yeah, I just feel so grateful for the beautiful people that I met there and um, the ways in which we can like continue to support each other and be a part of each other's lives now.
Yeah, I think that that's real. I think that like it's really cool to see like even years later people like meeting up because the like civic group chats still kind of ever so often are active and people will send like flyers or like this event is happening or if anybody's like around in this state in this place like I'm around these dates and people are actually meeting up, which is kind of cool. So I've always like been pretty yeah, touched by that, I guess. Like something that we say every year too is like, oh, the civic network is so strong, but it's like nice to see it actually like in action throughout the year, every year. Um, and I also think it's like because of that, um, it's always a different like kind of group of people, right? Like it's not that the same people are coming here every year, but every year I do feel like there is a kind of um an understanding that happens really quickly in each Siddhikar of like what is the like environment that we are cultivating here together? Like what is the like what atmosphere do we want to be kind of learning together in? And how do we make sure that it's one that's like open and compassionate? And I think that like um that's always been really inspiring to me too, because that's not to say that every Siddhikar comes in and sort of adjusts that way, but it is to say that the like majority sort of sentiment is that like that is the environment that we're seeking to have and to kind of continue working at and to sort of protect, which is so cool. And I like probably have told this story like maybe a couple years ago on an old Civic pod, but like when I came in 2017, one of the things about like the schedule for the day is that we do an ardas before we eat, before every meal. And one of the Siddhikars has to like read it aloud while everybody repeats after them. And I remember this like just causing so much anxiety in me of like, I really hope that I don't have to do that. And I would like make my way to every meal like very slowly, hoping to arrive after the ardas had started. And it was partly because I didn't have that language experience. So I was like worried I was gonna say things wrong, or I was worried like people would be like, I don't
Mhm.
know what she's doing. And I remember one day I got there and I walked in and I was like, it was like too late to turn around. I like realized very quickly that I was the first one there.
Mhm.
And one of the people who was helping out with coordination that year, who's like no longer working at Sidak, was like, you know, you got to do it. And I was like, I can't do it. And they were like, you got to do it. Come on. And they like handed it to me. And I remember looking at them and being like, but what if I make a mistake? And they were like, isn't this like truly the most ideal environment in which to make a mistake? Like, isn't this where you want to do it? And I was like, oh, that's a different way of looking at it that I really appreciated. And even just like, you know, we've had a couple of civic planning meetings so far for this year, and every year, like all the facilitators are asked why they keep coming back and what their kind of hope is for this year, personally, like in their own Sikh journeys.
Mhm.
And one of the things that I've been really thinking about is like, you know, I have been coming to Civic so much since 2017 as like a facilitator. So there are certain things that I feel like comfortable with that I didn't used to. But there are also certain things that I've like gotten away with not doing because I don't really have to do them as a facilitator. And it's like I don't necessarily have to put myself out there as much as I did as a civicer. And a thing I've thought a lot about is like the bravery of civicers who come and just like are trying. You know, like they're mispronouncing things and they're trying, and they're reading Hukum for the first time and they're trying, and they're doing a Shabbat for the first time and they're like really trying. And
Mhm.
I just want to like a little bit of that bravery like this year again. Because there's certainly things that I'm just like, I don't really want to do that. And I can kind of get away with like not revealing that I don't feel comfortable about it because like it's not explicitly being asked of me. Um, so that's a thing that I've always appreciated too about like that environment and the community that you end up with. It's exactly what you said. It's so supportive, even though it's a kind of like it's a different mix of people every year. It's really special. So I think maybe along that line of like me being like, I want to be brave. What what moments did you feel like pushed you out of your comfort zone at Sidic, and how did those moments shape you? Um, yeah.
Yeah. The two that come to mind first are um basically when you are like doing any kind of when I was doing any kind of presentation that like or speaking that everybody, it was in front of the Sangat. So everyone reading 40. I think it's a 40 from Asa Divar in the morning. Um, that can be a little nerve-wracking because, we go around the Diwan Hall and like when it's your turn, you read the 40. And but the beauty in that is that everyone does it, no matter what their skill level is, and we all accept it and we're all supportive. And I think the fruit of that is that once your turn comes and once your turn is over, like you were brave and you did it, and what happened happened. And I think you feel a little more comfortable in that vulnerability that perhaps for some people doing that is not vulnerable, but for many people reading Gurbani in front of everybody is vulnerable.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think that's like a really beautiful learning experience and a beautiful experience of being in Sangat is yeah, just engaging no matter where you are in your journey. And the second experience that very much mirrors that was you know, doing kirtan for Sangat for the first time. Everyone gets in their group and you practice if needed, like you practice your shabad that you will be doing for Sangat. And that was also nerve-wracking, but again, that support is there. Like, nobody is there to criticize you or to like make judgments about where you're at in your Sikhi journey. Like, everyone sings along with your kirtan, um, and how beautiful to just like have that opportunity in the first place. Um, if that's not something that you have ever done before. Um, so yeah, those are two experiences that like definitely took me out of my comfort zone, but I'm so grateful to have had them and like find so much beauty and appreciation in having had that opportunity.
Yeah, I think that's really beautifully said. Um, yeah, nothing to add to that. Um, I also I wanted to ask you about like memorable moments. So like a specific session, maybe a specific conversation, um, whether it was like a discussion led by a facilitator or a conversation with a fellow Sidiker or an activity or something that happened in the kind of in a moment of solitude, like anything, that kind of sticks out as like a core civic memory to you, um, that can give people a little bit of a sense of like what it's like to be there.
Yeah, there are a few that come to mind. Um, the day where we go to the nearby town and we do evening Diwan by the water, with the beautiful mountains around, like that's really beautiful experience. And I think other things that stand out are learning to receive Hukamnama from Babaji's beard. Uh, that was a skill that impacted me a lot. Not a skill, but like a learning experience that impacted me a lot and one that I practiced after Sidak. Um, and like other memories that come to mind surrounding that are like Jaspreet Benji like telling us about like how important that physical relationship is with Guru Granth Sahib Ji, and like what it really feels like to like be with Guru Granth Sahib Ji and like receive Hukamnama. Um, yeah, I learned a lot from that. And then another thing that comes to mind is um, when it was my turn, we all take rotations making prasad for everybody, kada prasad. And that's so beautiful, like being a part of that and like being a part of, yeah, preparing that prasad for Sangat. Um, and then also, yeah, those same Siddhikars who prepare the prasad are also the ones who distribute it to Sangat. And yeah, just like these really core experiences of um, these core experiences of Sikh practice and Sikh tradition, and like being a part of those in a way that perhaps someone like hasn't had the opportunity to be a part of in that same way before. I think that those are like some really solid memories that stick with me.
Yeah. I think that that last thing that you said is really the thing I was thinking as you were speaking is like there are so many Siddhikars who like just haven't sat behind the balki before, or they haven't touched the Guru Granth Sahib before, which is like why I really love Jaspreet's session where she's like, touch the pages, like interact with this physical, have this physical relationship with like the Guru's like words and also like the embodied Guru in the form of Shabad. Um, I think it's always like so moving to hear her talk about that. So yeah, I think a lot about like how for many Siddhikars, those core memories are just like doing things that nobody, maybe it's not that somebody has told them that they can't do it, but it's like a feeling of some kind of barrier. Whether it's like anxiety or just like not seeing people who look like you doing those things or not, there's like something about there's things we tell ourselves about who gets to participate in what aspects of our traditions. And I think it's such a like I don't know, an empowering thing and a moving thing to spend those 2 weeks just like, yeah, immersing yourself in all of that. And participating in all of that. And I know that like I mean, this is me saying this now, so many years after having to do it, but I remember when I came, I was like, oh, why do I like I have to do this and I have to like everybody has to do this. Um, and so and I think that it's like shifted in my brain as like it's not so much about like you're being forced to do this because you just got to do it. But it's like when else do you get to learn how to make prasad if you don't have that space at home? If like somebody hasn't been able to teach you at home, when else do you get to like sit behind the Guru Granth Sahib if you don't have one at home or if you feel like alienated from the Gurdwara in your town or whatever. Like it's just it feels more like an invitation rather than a push, if I can say that. And maybe
Yeah.
it feels like a push in the beginning, but um, I am really grateful for those experiences too.
Yeah, and I think that says so much about what kind of mindset we approach Siddhak with. Like, I think we can all relate to like, dreading doing something that we are like scared to do. But at the end of the day, being able to attend Siddhak and being able to have those experiences, even if it's vulnerable and scary, like that's a huge blessing. And I think what you were saying about like not seeing ourselves, not having had these experiences in our lives because of the ways that like Sikh culture traditionally operates um, in modern gurdwaras. Yeah, what I was thinking was just like Siddhak really bridges that gap. Siddhak really bridges that gap between like these kind of hierarchies that exist within Sikh culture. And it's like Siddhak is helping all of these people who are, just from all different backgrounds and just, everyday like members of the Sanghat, like it's helping these people have those experiences of like what it really feels like and means to like engage in these traditions and to learn about them and to learn how to do them and like but I think putting that knowledge in everybody's hands and distributing that knowledge is really important and yeah, really necessary work.
Yeah, that's really, really well said. Um, I don't know if this will be like a thing that maybe, I mean, we sort of have talked about this, but um, going back to like this notion of like, oh, you might be dreading these things because you haven't done them before, or like going back to the 10 times I've said like anxiety in this podcast. What did you feel like? Did you have any fear or like doubt before attending? And if you did, what was it kind of like centered
Yeah.
around? And did you feel like any of that kind of got resolved for you, or at least like maybe the sharpness of it was dulled during those 2 weeks?
Yeah. I would say, yeah, all the anxieties that I felt were quelled, like so often happens in our lives. Um, yeah, I think I was just nervous to like before Sidak, I hadn't just I in my life I haven't had a lot of Sikh Punjabi community. Like it was really only family that I was around who were like um Punjabi folks that I connected with. And then when I was growing up, we would go to Gurdwara like a couple times a year. And so in general, I've felt really alienated from Punjabi Sikh spaces throughout my life. And so putting myself into this experience for the first time where like I was just going to be immersed in a Sikh space for like 2 weeks straight, without really having like prior comfort or confidence in a similar environment. I think um, that was like the most intimidating thing for me. Um, but like it was really nothing to worry about. Yeah, like I suppose I was afraid of not feeling like I fit in or afraid of people being judgmental towards me, like all of these usual things that we kind of insecurities that can come up in us as humans. But yeah, like at the end of the day, me occupying myself with those worries like didn't do anything for me and it wasn't necessary. And it wasn't helpful. And like everyone there was lovely and I'm so grateful for the people that I met and like it never felt like there was a shortage of people to connect with either.
Yeah, that's real.
Like it was really beautiful to be able to just practice sitting wherever there was space in the Lungard Hall and like whoever you ended up sitting with, that's just who you talk with. And like you got to learn about so many different people and their backgrounds and um yeah, yeah.
Yeah, really that's real. Yeah, I'm thinking about like that exact visual of just like sitting down wherever and getting to know people because there are usually about like 60 people there. So there's plenty of people to talk to and sometimes it feels like there's just not enough days to talk to everybody in the like to the level that you want to. But um yeah, and I think that part of that is about the openness with which Siddiqers approach the experience and each other. I think like there's a warmth to those interactions that I find really special. Um, yeah, I think so. My other sort of question, and this is more maybe like technical, but I really wanted to ask you this as an alum of Gurbani 101. Um, like, did you feel like you needed to have like prior knowledge of Sikhi or of Punjabi or some kind of background knowledge um, in order to participate in your track. And if it's not like as extreme as like you didn't need it to participate, like maybe talk a little bit about what it looked like for you um, to come into what is essentially like a sort of I mean, it's a language course in uh, and to come in without necessarily having that background knowledge, what that looked like for you in your day to day. Because I think there will be people interested in the track who maybe don't are similar, who don't have that background that they're coming in with.
Yeah. I think prior knowledge of Gurmukhi is really helpful. I'm sure you will still be able to get something out of it if you are not able to read Gurmukhi, but you will be able to engage more deeply and follow along more easily if you can read Gurmukhi. And also, as somebody who learned Gurmukhi as an adult, I just want to tell people that it's not as scary as you think. It is approachable, and I encourage people to learn how to read Gurmukhi if that's something that you desire, and not to be afraid of that. Um, Apart from that, I think Gurbani 101 is designed to help you approach like, any given tuk from Guru Granth Sahib Ji and how to kind of start like piecing that apart and understanding how you can come to an understanding
Mm.
more directly. Um, so yeah, I mean that's the most foundational approach that there is. And prior knowledge of like South Asian languages, like Indo-Aryan languages, and just like their sentence structure and common vocabulary is helpful, but like you can start learning from wherever you're at, and I don't think that Gurbani 101 is like highly inaccessible to anybody, regardless of where they're coming from. Yeah, but if you are going to take Gurbani 101 later this year and you don't know how to read Gurmukhi, you should start now.
Yeah, I think that's helpful advice. Um, kind of along that line, because I think coming to Sidak, there are a lot of people who have sort of different, I don't know, I don't even want to use the word levels of understanding, but like different understandings, different like background knowledge maybe that they're coming in with, different experiences of SikhRI that they're coming in with. Um, and also in a kind of very tangible way, at least I think in Gurbani 101 and also sometimes in 201, like there's a different mix of people. So some people maybe have more foundational sort of understandings of Sikh principles, or maybe some people have never really had those kinds of discussions before. And I think there's a lot of, um, at least in kind of the way that the courses are designed, there's like an attempt to get everybody on the same page after like day one or two, but it can still feel a little bit overwhelming. So I'm wondering, like, in your experience, how did you feel like this kind of support system of your like peers and your facilitators worked so that you felt like supported and empowered throughout those 2 weeks to like engage in your track, um, kind of to the level that you wanted to, or in the way that you wanted to? Um, I've seen every year, especially with the Gurbani 101 students, like a lot of like Langar Hall group efforts being made to like get homework done, to kind of understand things. And I've always really loved seeing it, even though I know that like there's so much stress in that room. So I'm just curious about like, yeah, your experience with that.
Yeah, you are right. In that um, my classmates tended to be helpful and supportive. And it felt like we were all learning together and like working through homework together, um, and working through confusion together. Um, yeah, I also think all of the instructors are really accessible and there to be helpful and there to be supportive. And yeah, so I felt comfortable like going up to any facilitator at any time and asking them for any knowledge that they had on something that I was curious about or struggling with. And yeah,
Yeah, I think that's helpful. Yeah, I mean, that's also like one of the things that I really love from both angles, like that I experienced as a civicer and I experienced as a facilitator, is like I just think that the longer haul conversations are unmatched. And always like I always leave Sidak having had at least like a few of those conversations that have really like shifted my perspective, um, or like made my brain kind of hurt in a good way. Like I feel myself kind of expanding or something in those conversations. Um, so yeah, and I think when the facilitators talk about that um yeah, sort of dynamic, I think that's one of the things that they all really appreciate is being able to be around and like be accessible. Um, so yeah, I would echo that sentiment from the other end. But maybe we can just sort of like start to close. Um, I did want to ask not about skill development, but maybe about just like what you feel like you've taken from Civic that has kind of colored your everyday. Um, It could be a skill. It could be just like, well, now I feel more comfortable like taking hookem. Um, or it could be something like more a little more abstract. I just wanted to know like, yeah, what you kind of took away from Civic that has continued to sort of, yeah, permeate your life.
Hmm. Yeah. I'm not being dramatic when I say this, but like so many things, like Sidak really changed my life. In multiple ways. Like, I think one thing from Sidak that's like super foundational, but was really helpful for me is just like having more knowledge of the flow of what happens in Divan and like why certain things are done, and also having had the experience and the opportunity to be involved in like a more facilitator way in some of the things that happened during Divan. Like that makes me feel a lot more comfortable at Gurdwara, just kind of like, oh, I know what's going on a little bit more. And so that's one thing that I really got a lot out of from Sitak. Another thing is more directly related to the Gurbani 101 course. I'm now able to like look up words that I don't know from Gurbani and like come to a more accurate or direct understanding without relying on English translations. Um, and that's something that I do regularly. So I feel like overall what Siddha did for me is just like make my relationship with Sikhi and with Gurbani and with Sangat feel like more approachable and accessible and less like um less far away.
I think that makes sense. That's really beautifully said. I think, um, yeah, it's interesting. The idea of like your own Sikhi feeling far away from you, I think is a really common one.
Hmm.
And it can feel like a thing that is inaccessible because we have only sort of conceptualized it as like a list of things that we ought to be doing that maybe we're not doing, or have conceptualized it as something that's a lot more closed off than it actually is. Um, and I feel like Civic really like offers an expansive, like a vastness to the space that you can kind of explore your Sikhi in, if I can say that. Um, and so I really think that that's a beautiful way to say it. So thank you. I think I wanted to ask you like two more questions. One is a little bit like, tips and tricks. Not even tricks, but like tips for somebody who's like considering coming to Civic but still feeling unsure, like anything that not even a tip, but like something that you maybe would want to say to them. Um, and then like, should they come, what advice would you offer about kind of making the most of that experience. So it's a two-parter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, question one is tips or tricks, or is that question two?
That's question one, and maybe we can nix tips and tricks as as the thing I just said, but just like advice for people who are unsure about applying. Yeah.
Mhm. I mean, my first thought is like you should apply. I don't think you'll regret it, and I understand if it feels intimidating. Um, and I might have more to say about that, but what I just said is a good segue into question two, which is like how to get the most out of it. And perhaps this is just my approach, but like essentially why you're there is for Guru Sahib. And so I would recommend just like if you can, like it's so easy in this world to not prioritize Guru Sahib and to get distracted and to like give ourselves reasons for that. And yeah, so if you can, I would encourage you to go to Sidak with just this prioritization and love and like intention to deepen your relationship with Guru Sahib. And and that comes about in all different ways. Like that comes about through Sangat, that comes about through Gurbani, that comes about through Langar, like all of the things. But like while you are there to make friends, you're also not there to make friends. Like at least not. I think what I'm trying to say is like socialization it is not something I would recommend as like a priority.
Mm.
Um, or at least just like having that socialization rooted in like your relationship with the guru.
Yeah, I think that's important because it is about meeting people and sort of cultivating a sangat. But I think the way that that experience at Sidik becomes the most transformative is when like that kind of intentionality is there. Something that um, Gurpratap Singh said in the first episode was like he felt like Sidik taught him how to be more attentive, to like give things time and attention. Um, because there is this like we live in a world and in this world like everything can feel really extractive or quick or like we don't have time to actually like work through things. We want like answers. And I do think Civic is a unique space because it's not just that you're being asked to kind of give attention to the material in the classroom, it's also that you're like asked to give attention to like your interactions, um, and kind of be really reflective on a day-to-day basis for 14 days. Like in the morning, we are talking about the hukam for that day, and we're in the evening, we're like reflecting on how that kind of swirled around in our hearts and minds throughout the day. And just that like intentionality, I think is it's so easy to lose that on like I don't know, in a day-to-day sort of, you know, experience of like being in the world and not like in the mountains with a bunch of sangat. So I think that that's great advice that like to reflect more on like what the prioritization is when you're there and to make sure that your priority is like deepening that relationship. I think that's really beautifully said. Um,
I
okay.
have one more thing I can
Yeah.
say
Okay.
in terms of the first part of that question.
Yeah.
Yeah, just for folks who are like perhaps still feeling hesitant, or like maybe you have decided but are experiencing hesitation or just nervousness, like I I felt like I was among the people at Sidak, like I was amongst like the Siddhikars who maybe grew up with the least exposure or immersion in like Sikh spaces. Like their family didn't go to Gurdwara much, like neither of their parents taught them much about Sikhi. And um, yeah, I found other people there who like came from a similar background, who were like, I'm here and I don't really know what's going on, like, and it was really comforting to not be the only person in that position. And I would imagine that like no matter where you're coming from, like there will be other people there who you share experience and background and vulnerabilities with.
Yeah, that's great. That's really beautifully said too. So a theme. Um, okay, we'll close it with the last question, which is if there's anything else you'd like to share, which you kind of did. But any last words as we close? And if not, we can just close. That's fine.
Um, yeah, I mean, I'm just so grateful for Sidak. I'm so grateful to have been able to go to Sidak. And aside from just me personally, I'm so grateful that Sidak exists. I feel like there's so much beauty that ripples out into the world from Sidak, and like there's not really anything that I'm aware of that offers a similar experience. And it's also beautiful. The land there is amazing, and it's really a unique experience and a special opportunity to be given the gift of like spending time that way. So yeah, that's my closing words.
Beautiful. Like I'm gonna tear up. Okay, well, what I will say then is thank you all for listening and thank you, Phera, for your time. Um, if you have any questions, if you're thinking about applying to Sidak and you have questions, feel free to email sidak@sikhri.org. And if you just want to learn more about the tracks and take a look at the application, you can go to sikhri.org/Sidak. Thank you again for joining us. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru
ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ.
Sidak is a transformative leadership development program for young Sikh adults aged 18 to 39. Engage in an immersive 2-week experience that fosters connection, growth, and a deeper understanding of SikhRI.
You are listening to SikhCast by Sikh Research Institute, illuminating every path.